what does my husband always say? A rational conversation with an irrational person.
Right.
And those three topics you mentioned calls for a lot of irrational people at times because they get so passionate because everybody's always, there can never be like a collective, like, okay, you know what? I understand where you're coming from. Hear me out. Okay, we agree to disagree, but we're all good. It's always like, oh, you just hate this and you hate that. And it's just like, that's really not what I'm saying, but okay. And also because those three topics, people want you to, I guess, follow their lead and be on their side so much. And you're like, well, I can prove it to you. And it turned into like, well, you can't change I'm my own person. Why are you trying to change my mind and make me think something that doesn't make sense to me? And that's typically what happens with those three topics.
Yeah. And then at the end of the day, it's like, you really didn't prove anything to me except what I've been hearing you and so many other people say. But if you slide your thinking to the side a little bit, you will realize that what you're saying kind of conflicts with reality, and you just don't want to accept reality.
Right. And at that point, there's nothing I can do.
Right. It's like, you know what? I'm done with these conversations.
Finished. We're through.
Oh, man. So jumping back to panels right quick. What is the longest you've been on a panel?
Lord, I'm going to kill Miss Guy because it was like maybe like my third panel. Was it like my third or my fourth? I was doing them almost every Friday because I was still working from home. Like my schedule was still very flexible. And there was a panel where we were on for like 4 hours. Then someone came on, and this is when the late Kevin Samuels was still alive, still with us. And they said, Kevin Samuels just said this, you need to do a reaction because you'll be the first one. So let's go. And I was just like, what does this mean? Like, what do you mean a reaction? Like right now? Because my reaction is to go to bed. And she's like, no, come on. It'll only be like an hour, whatever. We started at 8 p.m. I went to bed Saturday at 4 a.m. And I texted Miss Ty the next day and I said, I don't think I can do this ever again. I was like, girl, my mouth was so dry. My throat is hoarse. Like I've never done so much talking in my life, not even at work. I cannot do it. And she was just laughing the whole time. She was like, girl, I know it was such a long night and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But I just love her. So I was like, girl, I can't do this no more. Like 7-hour girl, that's a whole shift. I did a whole shift.
Look, let me tell you, I think I was on with her one time for like 9 hours. I used, when I first started, it's like, because when Kaya was on,
right.
I would see her hop on at 7:30 and I go do something, and then it'd be 11 o'clock and I'd be like, damn, they still, what are they talking about? Then I pop in and then the conversation's going and I'm like, I'm going to bed. Then I would wake up in the middle of the night and couldn't fall right back to sleep. And I'd be like, it's 2 o'clock. Why are they still on?
Still going. It was almost like surreal, right? Like you were in a different world. Because I would be like, they're still going. Let me pop in. Hey. She was like, hey, girl, come on up. I'm like, it's 3:30 in the morning. I just got up to pee. I can't pop.
Let me tell you.
Back up.
It was during our telework time. But with my office, one of us had to go to one of the buildings to, put out masks and stuff like this.
Okay, right.
So her thing started at 7 o'clock that night. My alarm goes off at 4:45 in the morning. I leave out the house at 5:20 and I happen to be driving to work and I happen to hop on while I was driving. I get to work at 7 o'clock. And I leave work at 11 o'clock. Oof. They were still on.
Yep.
And I got home by like 1:30. It was still on. I was like, there's no way.
I don't know how she does it. Or how she did it, because I haven't seen her on in a long time.
Yeah,
I don't know how. And I love it because she used to start on her own by herself. She was like, okay, now I'm going to let people up. She had her own little routine, her thing. And I'm just like, wow, it'll be like, and then at the end, you'll be like, oh, you can catch this 12-hour stream now. And I'm like,
man, do you know it's hard enough to stick through like a 30-minute stream?
Agreed. I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's just so long for me. And at one point, like, I start feeling bad because I'm just like, I hope I seem like I'm invested, because, you do start feeling a little tired,
right?
And you're like, okay, I don't know, what else can we do? What else is left? So I'm just like, I hope I look like I'm having fun on camera.
Right. I hope
I'm like,
add value to the stream and stuff like, but you, in your head, you be like, yo, why are we still on here?
I'm like, sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, or like if I rewatch it, I'm like, oh, I was getting tired because I'm blinking too much. I'm trying to keep the eyes saturated.
And then a fresh person comes in, then you get a little burst of energy. You be like, yo, I said I was going to bed.
Right. Like, why am I up right now? And that's what happens all the time. I'm just like, okay, somebody else is about to come up. I'm like, oh, this is about to be good. Oh, we're about to get into it. And then as soon as they come up for like the first 20 minutes, you're like, yeah, that 21st minute hit, and you're like, yeah, wait, I remembered I said I was leaving because I got work in an hour. It's like,
yeah. Oh, man. So we got a few more questions, like 3 or 4 more questions. So I know you've been hit with COVID. It hit me too in March, and it just hit me a couple weeks ago.
Again?
Yeah.
Don't say that.
So, other than that, have you ever been to the point where you just were forced to take a break from podcasting?
Yes. And that's typically when the burnout hit, because I was so excited, popping out episodes every week, keeping up with like content engagement on social media, because that's the problem too. Like, you can't just put out an episode and be like, all right, I did it. The episode's out. You have to promote yourself. You have to value yourself. You have to let others see your value. So it's just like a lot of engagement, a lot of answering people, a lot of liking comments, a lot of going through other people's stuff too, because you got to show love back and make sure that they stay relevant, because that's what happens on Instagram. You can get lost real quick. So I'm just like, we got to help each other out. So I'm out there liking stuff, making comments, answering questions, answering DMs. I was just like, I need a break. I need at least 2 weeks of not having to sit down and edit, not having to sit down and write notes, not having to sit down and like anything. Like, I don't want to be here.
Yes, I feel you.
So there was a point, and I want to say it was mostly like once I had already hit the year. I was very close to hitting the year. So it definitely happened the beginning of this year, because last year was so much fun. It was like my first Thanksgiving, my first Christmas, my first everything with the podcast. And I had so many ideas for it that I was just excited. I didn't have like a stunt in ideas. But then once the new year hit, I'm like, oh, so we start the year all over again. What do I do? Like, what else do I talk about? I don't want to talk about New Year. Everybody's like, oh my God, New Year, new me. I'm like, no, same old me, just older. I don't know what else to talk about. I don't want this right now. So for like a good 2 weeks, I was just like, I'm going to sit back and relax. But I did enjoy people reaching out saying, hey, are you okay? What's going on? You didn't put on an episode, because that made me feel like, wow, people are really listening.
Right.
And that's what brought me back and gave me kind of like that spark where I was just like, okay, you're tired. You just got to figure it out. Pace yourself, because people are actually listening to you.
Right. Yeah.
So you're whatever you say is resonating with somebody. Yeah. And that's what you're doing it for. So that's kind of like what picked me back up and was like, all right, I just have to figure out a good schedule and pace myself, because if I stop, I'm going to be doing a disservice, because people like that stuff. So,
yeah. So, to follow up with that, when you do your podcast topics, do you do an outline, or do you just a title and wing it?
I cannot do a title and wing it. I wish I could. Like, if I was on a panel, or like if you just told me, hey, come up, let's just shoot the shit. That'll be different, because we'll be bouncing ideas off of each other and stuff like that. But when you do solo podcasts, for me, it's difficult, because you have to have some type of agenda. So it's hard for me to just wing it off the dome. So I do write. So I like to write. So I do write almost all my episodes out, only because I like reading, like where I'm going to insert the jokes. I like really reading that stuff. And also because I don't know what